The camera angle that you've got is perfect. If you'll keep your camera right there, that'll allow us to see the people we're supposed to be seeing. And Caseworker LaFleur, I will refer to you if you'll have your program up and your computer system up. There are some questions I'm going to be asking you to confirm for us, so if you'll be ready to do that, I would appreciate that. So gentlemen, if you'll go to your spots for me and bring Mr. Simpson, and I believe he has representation with him, if you'll bring them to the table, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sounds good. You got it.
Good morning, gentlemen. If you'll take a seat, please.
Thank you.
Okay. And you are Orenthal James Simpson?
Correct.
And Mr. Simpson, will you please give me your NDOC number for the record?
1027820.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Simpson. And you're represented by whom this morning?
Mr. Malcolm Laverne, my attorney.
Okay, and welcome, Mr. Laverne. Mr. Simpson, the first thing I'm going to do is put on the record your notice of this hearing and advisement of rights and ask you if you will recognize your signature for me, please.
Yes, I believe, yes.
Okay, thank you. Having recognized your signature, I'll declare for the record. And we'll go forward. I'm Chairman Bisbee.
Okay.
With me this morning to the right is Commissioner Endel. To my left is Commissioner Jackson, and then to her left is Commissioner Korda. We're seeing you this morning on an aggregated case sentence, and that is cases number C237890, count 9, assault with a deadly weapon, C237890, count 6, use of deadly weapon enhancement, C237890, count 10, assault with a deadly weapon, C237890, count 5, use of a deadly weapon enhancement, C237890, count 8, use of a deadly weapon enhancement, C237890, count 7, use of a deadly weapon enhancement. And one of the things I want you to make you aware, those enhancements include the kidnapping and the robbery charges, even though they're not necessarily the way I've said it. Make that clear. And Caseworker LaFleur, I have a parole eligibility date of October 1, 2017, with a current expiration date of September 29, 2022. Is that correct?
That is correct. I have a parole eligibility date of October 1st, 2017, and an expiration date of September 29, 2022.
Now, at this point, Caseworker LaFleur, is there anything that would change that parole eligibility date?
That parole eligibility date is not going to change.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Simpson, you are getting the same hearing that everyone else gets. I want to make that clear from the get-go. However, since we have a crowd of people here that have not taken advantage of our public meetings before in order to attend a hearing, some of the things I'm going to get a late, so you will understand everything, but it will be new information for some other folks. So just wanted to let you know that from the get-go. I will tell you that as appointed members of the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners, we have an ethical duty to consider each inmate for parole in a fair and consistent manner. Like other parole boards across the country, our responsibilities include needing to balance prisoner rehabilitation with public safety, as well as taking action that considers the interests of justice. So that's what we're doing here this morning. We have adopted a guideline to assist us in making consistent decisions. We apply elements
elements and factors of our guideline to each inmate being considered for parole. A component of the guideline is our risk assessment. The board uses a scientifically developed, validated risk assessment as part of the guideline. Risk assessment helps us determine which inmates are more or less likely to return to prison if we release them on parole. Using a risk assessment is not unique to Nevada, as a number of other state parole boards also use them. We have revalidated our assessment 3 separate times in the past 14 years.
We have revalidated our assessment 3 separate times in the past 14 years and has consistently shown to be predictive. Using this risk assessment has significantly improved our overall performance. I'm going to go over each of those items of the risk assessment with you at this time. And just as an aside, this risk assessment is being revalidated even as we speak by the JFA Institute. So it's pretty darn predictive is the bottom line here. So my first question for you, Mr. Simpson, were you arrested for the first time at the age of 24 or older?
I was arrested for the first time, I think, at the age of 46 or 47.
Okay. And am I correct that you have never been on parole or probation before, therefore you have never had a parole or probation revocation?
That is correct.
Okay. And I have that you were unemployed at the time of this offense because you were in retirement status.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Now, this is a property conviction. We're currently hearing you on the robberies and the enhancements. And so you have been assessed as a property offender. Now, we've also assessed you as having a substance abuse problem. I'll tell you why that is. You have indicated also in the past that alcohol had a big factor in this particular crime. And the fact that you have spent the last almost 9 years in prison because of an alcohol-related incident would be indicative of having some sort of at least temporary substance abuse problem. So we have scored you with having some history there.
Have you as male, and we have that you are currently, well, very recently turned 90 years old. 90, I'm sorry about that. You look great for 90. How about we take 2 decades off and call you 70? Okay. We don't have you as having any gang affiliation.
Nor has the NDOC found you to have any gang involvement. We do note that you have completed one of the vocational trainings in having completed the computer application course. We note that you have not had any disciplinaries, either current or pending, and that you're currently medium level there at Lovelock Correctional Center. Would you say that all of those items are correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you do score out. Your risk score scores you in a low risk. However, because of your particular offense, that severity is at the highest. When we combine your risk score along with your offense severity, our guideline recommendations are that we consider factors. Now, what consider factors means is we consider everything in terms of whether or not you're a risk to reoffend and return to our criminal justice system. And so what we do at this point, when we're looking at the risk score, we also look at what are called aggravating and mitigating factors. Now, aggravating and mitigating factors don't include everything in the world. They're very specific as to what we consider under those items also. So under the aggravating and mitigating factors in your particular case, we have mitigating or positive things for considering you for parole is the fact that you've been disciplinary free throughout your entire period.
You don't have any prior conviction history. You have community and family support. You have what appears to be stable release plans. You have participated in programming, some rather significant programming. On the aggravating factors, and the only thing that fits under our aggravating characteristics in terms of risk in your situation is that at the time of this offense, your victims indicated that they were in fear for their safety, having been threatened with a gun during the commission of a crime. So those are the risk, aggravating, mitigating things we are considering. That's your overall risk score. Right now, I'm going to stop talking for a while and ask the members of the panel if they might have any questions of you.
Yeah, Mr. Simpson, you've lived most of your life in the public spotlight. Yet you go into a hotel room in Las Vegas, bring along 4 other men with you. 2 of them are armed, and rob the 2 victims of property. What were you thinking?
Well, this might be a little long. I'll try to be brief with it. I had been contacted by a man named Ricio. He had contacted me over a period of time, told me that there was some guys that was trying to get him to fence my property, and he thought I should come and get it. Well, I kind of blew him off because I'm really not interested in football property. I don't collect memorabilia, only my own personal items. He was pretty persistent in calling me, and finally I told him, well, see if you can get pictures of what they have. He sent me some pictures, and what I saw was my family, my mother's albums, pictures of my kids growing up, certificates of accomplishments of mine, pictures of what I call significant famous people, letters of myself. So I told him I would really like to get this stuff. So after a period of time, through what he described in court as the perfect storm, we all ended up in Las Vegas. You know, I was there for a wedding, and he told me that the property was there. And would I like to try to get the property? I said, of course I would like to get the property. He told me the names of what he thought were the people in the room, and I realized these are friends of mine. You know, actually guys who helped me move and store some of this stuff, right? So on the day of this incident, he came to my hotel to talk about how this would take place. I told him I met with a lawyer last night, and my sister and my daughter and some other friends, and discussed it. I pointed out another lawyer that was at the poolside as a part of this wedding party that was going on. I said I discussed with him, and they told me that I can't do this. If we're going to their home or even to their storage, OJ, you cannot go in there, because if they ask you to leave, you gotta leave. I said, Ricio, you gotta get him to bring it to a public place. He said, well, let me see what I can do. All of this has been testified to, so I'm not just going, you know. He called me and told me he told them to bring it to his room, and he's gonna have it brought to his hotel, and would I come and get it? I said, of course I'll come and get it. He says, a lot of stuff, OJ, you better bring some friends. Well, I had a couple of friends there at the wedding that was gonna go with me. He also said you should bring security. And I said, well, I know these guys, I don't think I need any security. I mean, it turns out that one of the guys, Bruce here, I didn't know it was him. I thought it was another guy named Mike, a friend of his, an ex-partner of his. But I said, I don't need any security. Well, later that day, when they arrived at his hotel and spread out my property, he called and he said, they're here. You come here, I'll meet you in the lobby. And you need security, OJ. This guy, Beardsley, big guy, and he's a little weird. You know, I think anybody that knows him knows he's a little different. I still told him this guy is not dangerous, man, but he says, man, bring some security. During the day when he was there, he met people from the wedding, and one guy, McClinton, said he did security in Las Vegas, and it would help his business if he could have me as a client. I told him I didn't need him, but after he insisted that I bring security, I said, I can use your help. I went to the hotel. I met Mr. Ricio in the lobby. The 2 guys, they also met us there, which was a big mistake, obviously. I realized that quite soon after this. And Mr. Ricio led us to his room, put the key in the door, and let us in. I know I've seen the last 2 or 3 days the media reporting we broke in the room. Well, we didn't break in any room. Mr. Ricio brought us into that room. When I came into the room, I noticed spread out everywhere was my personal property. You know, the only thing I saw that was on display that wasn't mine was some baseballs, and I made it clear to everybody, those are not mine. All I want is my property, and I think there's a tape of it. You hear me on at least 3 or 4 occasions say, I just want my property. Go forward and try to make it a little quicker. At some point, we started, when we're leaving the room, actually I was being pushed out of the room by the security guys, because while I was in there and I recognized Bruce was there, I was surprised to see him as he testified. I was shocked really to see him. Bruce has been a friend of mine. He's traveled with me. We've done a lot of business together over the years. And he and I said, man, what are you doing here? You know, he explained to me why he was there and why he had my property there. And I told him, but geez, you should have told me. I accepted, I understood why. You know, it was 06, 07. People were losing their homes. A guy owed him money, couldn't pay him the money, gave him my property to sell. I told him I understood that, but you still should have told me. We had a chance to talk about this at a later date, and he apologized. I accepted his apology. I apologized for these 2 guys that got pointed a gun at him. He's traveled with me. He's known me when I've had security. He's known me when a venue has supplied security, and there were times he even had to act as security for me. He knows I would never, ever direct anybody to point a gun at him or even threaten him. I've never done this in my life. I want to point out, you mentioned all those gun charges. Bruce and Alfred, they made it clear during the trial that I had no weapon. They didn't feel threatened by me, and from what you said, and that I didn't threaten them. It was the other 2 security guys that did that. And I haven't made any excuses in the 9 years that I've been here, and I'm not trying to make an excuse now. They were there because of me, you know. But in no way, shape, or form did I wish him any harm. As I was leaving the room, and this was on the tape too, Bruce said, OJ, hey man, there's a box that's with that stuff. They're Montana prints. Those don't belong to you. Those are mine, man. He told me that because he recognized everything else that I took out of that room was mine, you know? And he also recognized that I wasn't there to steal his stuff, and he was his, and which I attempted to do. I told him we'll leave it at the desk. I'll send you stuff at the desk. We didn't know at the time that this security guy, Walter Alexander, had stole his BlackBerry, you know, phone, but the minute I saw that, I made him send it back, and he gave some cockamamie story in the trial that why he didn't take it back. In any event, I'm no danger to pull a gun on anybody. You know, I never have in my life. I've never been accused of it in my life. Nobody's ever accused me of pulling any weapon on them. And Bruce knows that I would never do that. I never have. I want to also, as a postscript, add that, you know, when I got to Lovelock, the state of California took up the issue of whose property it was. They did an investigation, and they came to the conclusion that it was my property. They turned it over to me. I have it now, you know? So, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling that they turned over to me property that I'm in jail for trying to retrieve. You know, it was my property. I wasn't there to steal from anybody. And I would never, ever pull a weapon on anybody.
So you believe that the property was yours?
It's been ruled legally by the state of California that it was my property, and they've given it to me. I have it.
My question was, that's why you were...
A hotel room,
yeah,
because
yes,
you
sir.
believed that the property was yours. Is that right?
Yes, man. You know, I whenever he was just telling me, when Mauricio was calling me, just telling me this, I wasn't interested. It wasn't until he got actual pictures of what they supposedly had, and because it was family photos and stuff, that's when I got interested in going there, and I only went there to retrieve my own property.
What were you thinking when the guns were being brandished?
Well, I didn't see the guns brandished. I didn't see, you say guns, as I understand it, one guy who's behind me somewhere pointed a gun at him. So I never saw him brandish a gun. When I left there, I called back to the room to ask Bruce, you said that there was some pictures what do you have? And I asked him, did this Walter Alexander return his cell phone? He told me no, and he says, OJ, it wasn't cool that guy pointed a gun at me. I said, who pointed a gun at you? He says that, he kind of described who it was. To be honest, I didn't really believe him at the time. I asked the 3 guys I was with, they all said they didn't see him do it. I got back to my hotel, we waited for these 2 security guys to show up. And the minute they drove up, the first thing I said, man, did you pull a gun in that room? And he swore to high heaven he didn't. And I asked Walter Alexander for the cell phone, and he kind of threw the cell phone to me. But I wasn't aware until I was in the car driving back to our hotel that this guy had actually pointed a gun at him. Now, earlier in the day when he was talking to me, trying to get me to let him come, I didn't hire him. He said it was for free and all of that. He did show me. I didn't know this guy. You know, I knew the Alexander guy, but I didn't know this guy. He showed me his license. He showed me his CCR. You know, I would assume that the state gives a guy a CCR and stuff. They vetted him. I should have vetted him. I didn't really need him. I knew these guys weren't dangerous. So that was on me.
Your version of the offense is
About the official records, Mr. Simpson, but moving forward here, considering the fact that what we have on record, weapons were brandished, you were there, property was taken.
Oh, I was there. I mean,
So
I'm sorry.
my next question is for you, is what do you think was the impact on your victims?
well, I know what the impact was. I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, Mr. Beardsley, we had long talks back then. He told me that he had tried to call my lawyer. He testified in court that he had called my lawyers and tried to tell them in the months previous that guys had my property and they were trying to sell them, but my lawyer never called him back. He actually testified for me, I'm sure you know, during the trial. Bruce and I talked, and you know, Bruce was traumatized by it. Fortunately, as I said, we talked it out. He knew that I would have never condoned what happened. He accepted my apology, and I told him that these guys should be put in jail. If they did that, you know, I wasn't going to defend them. Unfortunately, they got a get out of jail free card when they say OJ told me. Nothing I could do about that. But I want to point out that, you know, Bruce, I knew his family. I mean, when his mother was terminally ill, I'd call, she was a fan, I'd call her and sing to her. The night before or the night of the jury's verdict, his son actually called me and tried to give me a head up on something to do with memorabilia and told me that he and his mother was cheering for me. You know, this family knows that I wouldn't wish any harm on these guys, ever. These are mine, and I'd like to think we're friends again.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Simpson.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hearing in 2013 with hearing representative, Mr. Robin Bates. You recall that hearing? All right. At the time, we asked you what your plan would be if we were to grant you 2-year consecutive sentence. And you told us that you were going to complete commitment to change. Have you done that?
No, I haven't. At one point, I couldn't take the course. You know, I took 2 courses that I guess you guys don't give much credit to. It's called Alternative to Violence. I think it's the most important course anybody in this prison can take because it teaches you how to deal with conflict through conversation. I've been asked many, many times here to mediate conflicts between individuals and groups. And it gave me so many tools how to use it to you know, to try to walk these guys through, you know, not throwing punches at one another. Also, at one point, a couple of guys came to me and they said, OJ, I understand you're a Baptist. We're Baptists and we have no Baptist service here. Can you help us get a Baptist service here? I worked with them. We now have an ongoing Baptist service. that that's well attended. I attended religiously, and Pawnee is attended. And I realized in my 9 years here that I was a good guy on the street. I'm sure when Bruce get here, he'll tell you I was always a good guy. But I could have been a better Christian, and my commitment to change was to be a better Christian.
All right, thank you. Well, we do know that you've programmed over your term of incarceration, and you have completed victim empathy, alternative to violence, both basic and advanced, and computer application. I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about victim empathy and alternative to violence, and how it will benefit you in the future.
Well, as I said, the alternative to violence courses, I've always thought I've been pretty good with people, and I've basically have spent a conflict-free life. You know, I'm not a guy that ever got into fights on the street and with the public and everybody, but as I said, they give you a bunch of little tools about how to talk to people instead of fighting, instead of throwing punches. Tools that I've used here that, you know, it's how you talk to people, it's the tone that you use. The victim empathy was, once again, I didn't really see that, in this case, I didn't really see that Alfred Beardsley was really affected by it all. But Bruce was affected. You know, Bruce was, I saw that he was affected, and as I said, I would have done anything not to have that happen. If for no other reason, I regret this because he had to have this guy point a gun at him. And he told me, he said, man, the guy put a gun in my face. You know, and I said, as I said in the beginning, I didn't believe it, but I know it's to be a fact now. So, you know, in that empathy course, it pretty much tells the guys who's all there. You know, they have you talk to your victim, and what would you say to him? You know, if you were to see him now, and for you to take, you know, responsibility for what you did, and to recognize how it affected their lives. As I said, Bruce expressed to me how it affected him, and as I told him, I couldn't be more apologetic for him going through that.
Thank you. I know that alcohol was a factor in the instant offense. Have you addressed this issue as you stated you would?
Well, you know, I think I made it clear back then, I've never had an alcohol problem. And if I took that alcohol course, it would have been more, you know, for my children, in case they ended up having a problem. Well, my kids don't have a problem. I don't think anybody's ever accused me of having an alcohol problem or any kind of substance problem. Of course, on that day, I had drinks on that day, but it was a wedding celebration. But I've never had a substance problem at all. So I didn't.
Okay, well, you told us in our last hearing that you were going to attend an AA, and that's the reason for my question.
Yes, I know.
Was a factor in the instant offense. Hadn't you been drinking that day?
Yes, as I said, we were celebrating a wedding thing. I felt that the alternative to violence course and my involvement with the church, I also as recently became the commissioner of the softball league, 18-team league. My primary responsibility was rules enforcement and you know, player deportment. You know, guys is hot, the guys play, they argue. My job is that they get surly with one another to remove them from the game, and if it goes beyond that, to go to Coach Fraley and have them suspended. I've never got any blowback from the guys because they know that I've done the best that I can, and I'm just trying to keep them out of trouble. So my agenda was full. You know, here I've been active, totally active in all the years I've been here. I don't have much time to sit around and do anything. I don't know if that answers your question, but
So of all of the programs that you had an opportunity to complete, what do you believe is the most significant for you personally?
well, for me personally, it was the alternative to violence. As I said, I think that should be mandatory for every inmate here. You know, once again, guys get hot here, and you know, we've had our share of fights here, and as I said, I've been called in sometimes to try to keep guys from fighting. And you have groups, you know, it's the Serenos are fighting the Northtown boys. They all, I mean, it's crazy. And most of the time, it's over something really, really stupid. You know, in a basketball game, somebody will say something to somebody, or somebody will go to somebody to complain to them about it, and it's how they complain to them about it that actually initiated the conflict, you know, the fights. So I for the life of me, I don't understand why that is not a mandatory course for everybody here. Excuse me, my mind is trying to think of the other things, but that's the course that I would recommend to everybody. I mean, I took a computer course here, not because I was computer illiterate, but I took the computer course because I sometimes I could never get my kids on the phone, but if you text them or send something to them on a computer, you can get them. So I actually took that course so I could better communicate with my children.
All right, and have these programs prepared you to return to the community setting?
I believe so. You know, I've missed a lot of time, like 36 birthdays with my children, and you know, I spent the 12 years leading up to this incident in Vegas raising two kids in LA. I mean, I'm sorry, in Miami, and you know, with all the media stuff, you know, we got these guys like Jeffrey Felix making up stories and stuff. That was happening out on the street also. But I was able to keep their eye on the ball. They had great grades. They went to the college of their choice, and I ended up missing their graduation because of it. Trust me, I wish it would have never happened. But as I said, the courses that I take, and I hope it helps me more if I run into those conflicts with my kids. I'm not a guy that has conflicts on the street. I don't expect to have any when I leave here, but I feel that I'm much better prepared. But more so from, I think, my commitment to being a better Christian, because I thought I was a good guy. I had some problems with fidelity in my life, but I've always been a guy that pretty much got along with everybody.
Are you humbled by this incarceration?
Oh, yes, for sure. As I said, I wish it would have never happened. I was going to start, I didn't know how we were going to do this, by apologizing to the people of Nevada, because I wish this would have never happened. I apologized to them at my sentencing. You know, there's nothing I can do about this kind of media circus that's going on right now, but I could do something about the whole thing in the beginning. If I would have made a better judgment back then, none of this would have happened. And I take full responsibility, because I should have never, you know, I haven't made any excuses in 9 years here, but I should have never allowed these alleged security guys to help me, because it turned out they were only trying to help themselves. If they weren't there, Bruce and I, we tried to do this. We tried to sit down in the room and call this guy Mike Gilbert and discuss it all, but these guys took over and we were unable to do that. If we were able to do that, you would have never heard about this. None of us would be here today.
Okay, and lastly, I'd like you to know that we received hundreds of letters of support and opposition. And while we always encourage public input, the majority of the opposition letters are asking us to consider your 1995 acquittal and the subsequent civil judgment. However, these items will not be considered in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Hi, Mr. Simpson. When we grant offenders parole, one of the conditions of parole we will impose is to pay court-ordered restitution. According to the judgment of conviction, in this case, you and your co-defendants were ordered to pay $3,560 in restitution and return 12 Montana lithographs to the victims. Can you tell us the status of the restitution and the return of the property taken during the robbery?
Well, one, I was unaware of the restitution. I do know about the prints. When I was talking to Bruce on the phone and asking him, was there anything else that should be yours? He said, the cell phone, right? So I said, do you want to come and meet us with that, or How do you want to do it? A Mr. Cashmore, another guy I didn't know, a Mr. Cashmore said, hey, I got to go by that hotel. I'll drop it off, right? He testified to this too. This is not an allegation from me. Mr. Cashmore testified to it. So I say, hey, this guy is going to come back. He's going to drop it off at the hotel. His testimony later was that he didn't remember the name of who he was supposed to drop it off to, and that they had decided to screw OJ. We're going to keep this stuff. I mean, this is his testimony in court. The last thing I heard is that he actually tried to use those prints I can't find the word, to get his bail, with his bail bondsman. He was trying to use it as, I can't think of the word.
The restitution.
Restitution for his
and
bail
the
bondsman.
lithographs.
So the last that I know of these lithographs was that this Cashmore had them. I didn't know this guy, that he had them, and he testified to the fact in court that he had them.
The restitution was paid.
Yeah.
Let me ask you
The
this.
restitution was paid, I'm told, by my lawyer. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the total restitution has been paid?
Yes.
And there is no pending, the property has been returned to the lithographs as well?
I have no idea what this guy's, oh yeah, he says that they have been returned to him. I'm sorry, Bruce just signaled me that they have been returned to him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, sir.
All right. All right. If granted parole as opposed to completing your sentence in prison, you will be under supervision.
Better to be in the community than in the prison.
Well, you 4 kids. I've missed a lot of time with those kids. I think I am a guy who's always been a giving guy. I've, even on the street, people have always come to me, my reputation has always been that I'm open to the public, I'm open to everybody, right now I'm at a point in my life where all I want to do is spend time with as much time as I can with my children and my friends, and I'm not looking to be involved with the media. I've had so many offers for interviews when I've been here in Lovelock, and I've turned them all down. I'm not interested in any of that. I've done my time. I've done it as well and as respectfully as I think anybody can. I think if you talk to the wardens, they'll tell you I gave them my word. I believe in the jury system. I've honored their verdict. I've not complained for 9 years. All I've done is try to be helpful and encourage the guys around there, hey man, do your time, fight in court, and don't do anything that's going to extend your time. And that's the life I've tried to live because I want to get back to my kids.
All right. Do you realize that if you're granted parole, you could be returned to prison for any violation or conditions of parole?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. Now, some of those conditions can be easily as not drinking alcohol to excess, associating with ex-felons, leaving the state without permission, being subject to search and seizure. So there's going to be a whole slew of conditions you're going to have. You can be successful with in terms of parole.
Oh, beyond a doubt. I mean, I haven't drank in 9 years and I haven't missed it. Most of my life, I could be stopped and searched whenever I'm not a guy who lived a criminal life. I'm a pretty straight shooter. I've always tried to be a good soldier, and I have no problem, none whatsoever, in living with those conditions.
All right, so here's the other side of that. As an easily recognized person in the community, if you're granted parole, how will you handle public scrutiny in the community?
Well, I've been recognized ever since I was 19 years old. I'm sure Bruce will tell you, wherever we've been, it's always a crowd. This is not new to me. Rarely have I even in the last 20 years, rarely have I even had any person give me any negative stuff in the street. I mean, people give you looks and everything, but I'm pretty easily approachable. I've dealt with it my whole life, and I really don't foresee any problem dealing with the public now at all.
Okay, and Mr. Simpson,
hearing and explain the pre-release and interstate compact process for us. Captain Arudi is an officer with the Nevada Division of Parole and Probation. He's also the Interstate Compact Commissioner for the state of Nevada, so I'm going to ask him to come forward. And again, these are things that would happen behind the scenes with any hearing that we would have, but because we have a crowd of people that are asking questions, we thought it'd be best to have Captain Arudi present to explain it to everyone.
Thank you. I mean, I could easily stay in Nevada, but I don't think you guys want me here.
No comment, sir.
Good morning, Captain Sean Arudi from the Department of Public Safety, Division of Parole and Probation. As Chairman Bisbee shared with you, I serve two roles. I'm a captain with the Division of Parole and Probation for headquarters, and I also serve as the commissioner for Nevada for the Interstate Compact. When it comes to the Interstate Compact, the things that are looked at is what is your support system in that other state? Are you a resident of the other state as defined by the compact, meaning that you were living there for at least a year prior to the date that you committed the offense? Or do you have resident family there that can serve as your support system? And resident family is fairly specific, but adult siblings and adult children can serve as your resident family sponsor to provide you with that tie to the other state that would allow you to qualify for a transfer. But that's just the first part of it. First, we have to establish what your support system is and whether or not you qualify for that transfer, and then we make the determination if it's in your best interest to request that transfer for you. Once we make that decision, there's an offender application for transfer, which includes a waiver of extradition, which is required to be signed before anyone is allowed to submit a request for transfer to another state. What that does is it outlines to you what the requirements of the compact are, that you're subject to terms and conditions not only by the sending state, which in this case would be Nevada, but also by the receiving state. If you were looking to join your family in Florida, that the Florida would be able to impose conditions on you that would be consistent in the same manner that they would treat one of their own offenders in a like circumstance. From the once that offender application for transfer with the waiver of extradition, and the waiver of extradition serves the purpose that if for some reason you violate the terms and conditions of your supervision, you understand that Nevada has the authority to come and return you to Nevada to answer for those violations. Once we obtain that signed offender application, we will process that along with the other paperwork and documents that we need to submit to the other state, and they will then have up to 45 days to conduct their investigation on whether or not you qualify for the transfer and whether or not you have a valid plan of supervision. Once they determine that, their caseworkers will forward that through their compact office back to the Nevada compact office. And once we have a decision by that other state, then that would be provided to you through your case manager at the Department of Corrections. That's
on the pre-release side. The pre-release, we have pre-release specialists who work closely with the caseworkers at the Nevada Department of Corrections, and they help to develop that valid plan of supervision we were talking about. What is your plan of release? Where do you want to go to? Who's your support system? Once they make that determination, they process the information that's necessary. And in this case, if you were to apply for an interstate compact, our pre-release specialists would be the ones to forward those documents to the other state for their consideration. Once the determination was made and once a valid plan was developed, then they would work with your caseworker to set up your release and your caseworker would then manage the release through the Nevada Department of Corrections.
Sir.
Does the panel have any questions for Captain Arudi? I do not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie?
Now, Mr. Laverne, I'm gonna refer to the two of you, you and Mr. Simpson. We'd like Mr. Simpson to be able to tell us anything else he'd like to tell us. We'd also like to hear from one of the supporters if one of them wishes to make a brief statement to the board. And we would also like to hear your statement, Mr. Laverne, so I'm gonna put that back to you as to what order you want those two things to happen.
We're gonna hear from Mr. Simpson's daughter, Arnell Simpson, first, and then I'll make some closing remarks.
Okay, and Officer Batista, if you will make that switch for us, please.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good morning, ma'am, and if you will give us your name and for the record and your relationship to Mr. Simpson?
Yes, I am Arnell Simpson, my dad's oldest child of 4.
Hey, Ms. Simpson, welcome, and feel free to speak.
Thank you. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me.
So are we.
I know it's a lot. As you know, I'm here on behalf of my family for the purpose of expressing what we believe is the true character of my father. No one really knows how much we have been through this ordeal in the last 9 years. Excuse me. My experience with him is that he's like my best friend and my rock. And as a family, we recognize that he is not the perfect man, but he's clearly a man and a father who has done his best to behave in a way that speaks to his overall nature and character, which is always to be positive no matter what. He has spent the last 9 years in Lovelock, as we all know, and has been a perfect inmate, following all the rules and making the best of the situation, which is truly amazing to me under the circumstances. The choice that he made 9 years ago that resulted in the sentencing were clearly inappropriate and wrong and counterproductive to what he was trying to achieve. As a family, we were all there to celebrate a wedding of a very good friend. As his daughter, I can honestly say my dad recognizes that he took the wrong approach and could not handle the situation. He could have handled the situation differently. My siblings, I, and family know that he didn't make the right decision on that day, but we know that his intentions were not to go in and to just make the wrong decision at the wrong time. Throughout this ordeal, we have remained close. We have stayed strong. And I, for myself, am grateful to God for giving us the strength to get through this last 9 years and to stay positive always, no matter what. And a lot of that is because of him. So on behalf of my family, my brother, my sister, an aunt, an uncle, his friends, we just want him to come home. We really do. We want him to come home. And I know in my heart that he's very humbled throughout the situation. this has been hard. I'm gonna be honest, this has been really, truly hard. And there's no right or wrong way to explain how to handle this. But we do know that, I know that he is remorseful. He truly is remorseful. And we just want him to come home so that we can move forward for us, quietly, but to move forward. So I thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. We appreciate you being present and we appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And Officer Batista, will bring Mr. Laverne and Mr. Simpson back to the table, please.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Laverne, this would be the time for you and Mr. Simpson to make any closing remarks that you'd like to make.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Do you have a copy of a letter I provided through your liaison? It's an undated letter from Mr. Simpson to Assemblyman Osvaldo Fumo. That should have been provided to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we do
So,
have that
all
as
right.
part of the record.
So give me 2 seconds to get set up here, because that's where I'm going to start. Did you take the letter? I can't find it now. Switch. So. And the letter, as you can see, is very short, so I think it would be appropriate just to read it into the record, if the commissioners would allow me to.
That'd be fine.
Okay. But the first thing I have to do is find it. Here it is. By way of setting this letter up, by the way, the most important part about this letter is that this was not a letter that Mr. Simpson provided to me, okay? What happened is Mr. Simpson at some point wanted me to communicate with an individual by the name of Osvaldo Fumo. He's an assemblyman now, and prior to that time, and still now, he's an attorney. And in the interest of full disclosure, he actually was one of Mr. Simpson's attorneys during the habeas proceedings related to this case. But since that time, Osvaldo, or Ozzy as I call him, he's a friend of mine too, he became an assemblyman with the Nevada legislature. And after that, Mr. Simpson sent Mr. Fumo a letter, and I found out about that letter, not through Mr. Simpson. I found out about this letter through Mr. Fumo when I was advised to thank Ozzy Fumo for providing some, was it books and some educational equipment to the prison here at Lovelock, Nevada. And so I'm going to read that letter. And by the way, Mr. Simpson did authenticate this letter this morning. I'd only produced this to him this morning when I got to see him prior to this hearing. He did indicate that he was the one who wrote this letter. And even though it's not dated, he indicated it was probably sent to Ozzy within the last 9 months or so. Dear Legislator Fumo, first of all, allow me to say how happy I was to hear about your new position as a state legislator, although I was not surprised to hear about your interest in furthering the education and helping of prison inmates. I must admit, I've always taken my exposure to education for granted, partly due to my prowess as an athlete. I have always been afforded opportunities for higher education. It wasn't until I got to prison that I realized just how many people did not have the exposure to said education, in part because of their circumstances, i.e. gangs, bad neighborhoods, lack of parental supervision, poverty, etc. But Ozzy, I can't tell you how inspiring it is to see how said inmates have taken advantage of the educational department and the advantages that it offers. I have seen a change in some inmates as far as their self-esteem goes that is amazing. They come to me to talk about subjects that they would have never even thought about before their exposure to education. They talk to me about things they want to do when they are released, things they never would have thought about they were capable of before. They say, quote, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks," end quote, and as a, quote, "old dog," end quote, my friend, I can tell you that is not true. I am currently taking a computer science course, or just a computer course that has shown me that even I am capable of learning new skills. These new skills, at the very minimum, will help me better communicate with my children. Who knows, You may even see a webcast or blog in my future. I work in the athletic department here at Lovelock, and I fully enjoy what I do and can tell you that this is very important for the inmates to have a release for their energy and for recreation. But I can think of no better place to use state funds than to educate, add to their self-esteem, and to prepare these guys for their eventual release. In closing, I want to tell you how much I look forward to following your political career and your participation in what I know will be a very successful prison educational program. Gratefully yours, Orenthal J. Simpson. And it's signed by Mr. Simpson. And the reason I wanted to read this to you is because, and just kind of surprise Mr. Simpson with it, is because obviously this is Mr. Simpson's, what I would consider one of Mr. Simpson's first opportunities to have clout in the political system of the state of Nevada. He pretty much has an end at that point. He has Ozzie Fumo, who they had an attorney-client relationship with, a very good relationship, and now Ozzie is in the assembly. He's in a position of power. And what does Mr. Simpson do? Does he say, Ozzie, can I have a better bed? Or does he say, Ozzie, can you pull some strings, get me out of here earlier? No, he doesn't do any of that. He uses that clout. The one time he has some clout in the state of Nevada, he uses that clout to obtain funding for books and education in this prison. And some of those men, as Mr. Simpson said, they really are going to get out and they're going to have a decent and a better life for themselves as the result of Mr. Simpson's efforts through Mr. Fumo. I think that's the definition of character. And frankly, I think if it was me personally who had been in prison for 9 years, and frankly, forget 9 years, 9 days, if I had that opportunity in a position of someone in a position of power who could do something for me like this, I would be saying, get me out of jail, okay? But he doesn't do that. It is very, very, very selfless. He's thinking about the people here, and it's also the definition someone had asked earlier about being humbled and some humility. It also shows a genuine form of humility that he has the capabilities to think of people here who are not as empowered and not as privileged as he has been, and when he gets out, probably will continue to be in society. So that's the first part of my closing remarks. The second part of my closing remarks is to deal with the other individual in this case that was a victim. He's not here. Mr. Framong is sitting right here, and that's Mr. Beardsley. Mr. Beardsley, as you, I'm sure, are aware, is no longer with us. He passed away in about November of 2015. However, Mr. Beardsley and Mr. Framong have made calls to my office, and I've spoken to them both at various points. And the last time I recall speaking to Mr. Beardsley was in September of 2011. This is not that long after I had maybe been representing Mr. Simpson for a couple of years at that point. I was a little uncomfortable that Mr. Beardsley, who is a victim in a case, and my client is considered the person who victimized him, was calling me. So I did explain to him that I wanted to record the conversation, and he consented, and I asked him if he wanted an attorney before he talked to me. He said he was fine. I say this, I bring up this recorded conversation because I reviewed it in anticipation of this hearing, and that was from 2011, as I stated before. And since he's no longer here, I think I could just speak from the dead, speak from someone who's speaking from the dead. He indicated in no uncertain terms in that conversation that he had cleared up this matter with Mr. Simpson. He was trying his hardest to do whatever he wanted to get Mr. Simpson out of prison, and they had just made it right. Mr. Simpson had apologized to him, and they had just basically made it right. And he was and he had sent letters to Mr. Simpson and Mr. Simpson hadn't responded, and that was probably on the advice of counsel at the time. And then also there was another issue and Mr. Simpson has raised this issue, and I want to emphasize this again, that Mr. Beardsley had a set of photos, and these are not memorabilia. Mr. Simpson, if he didn't make his point already, he could care less about some signed football or some signed photos. He could care less about it. He could rip them up and burn them up. I know they mean a lot to a lot of people, but that was not what was really the true impetus for what happened here. What was the true impetus is that there were intimate family photos that were taken from him. literally stolen, and there's no dispute that these would not be any type of judgment, collections. These are just intimate family photos. Mr. Simpson had a former family, he had a second family. There's pictures of him with his mother and other things, famous celebrities, and they were not subject to being taken. They probably have no value to most people, but they have all the value in the world of Mr. Simpson. They're not footballs, and that's what set it off. And Mr. Beardsley had these photos, or he at least represented to me on the phone that he had these photos, and I had made every effort that I could to try and obtain those intimate family photos that I was well aware were basically all Mr. Simpson wanted in the first place. Unfortunately, whatever happened, Mr. Beardsley was never able to get those to me. He explained that he had them, and I tried to make every effort to get those from him. And then at some point along the line, we lost contact, and then I just discovered that he had passed away. But I will speak on Mr. Beardsley's behalf from that phone conversation that at least as of September of 2011, him and Mr. Simpson had made things right. Okay? And finally, and again, obviously the commission is not used to hearing where victims are calling people who are in prison their attorneys and having multiple conversations with them. I've also had Mr. Fremont, Bruce Fremont, who's sitting right here to my left and will testify shortly. He's also called my office. He had called before many years ago, and we had spoken, and I can't necessarily remember the substance of those conversations. They weren't recorded, or if they were, I couldn't find them in my files. But he's recently called again. He called me on July 3rd, and he called me on July 14th, and both times I missed the calls, but I called him back. And I can hear that Mr. Fremont has made things, and Mr. Simpson have made things right with each other, that he's accepted Mr. Simpson's apology wholeheartedly. He seems to be a fundamentally really, really good guy who's fallen on some hard times recently. And he told me that he would be coming in and testifying favorably for Mr. Simpson. I made sure I told him probably 15 or 20 times to say whatever he wanted to say, because, you know, obviously Mr. Simpson's attorney talking to a victim, it could be interpreted the wrong way. So again, Mr. Fremont, say whatever you want to say. Nobody's telling you how to testify here. And one of the things that we did, and I did inform parole and probation about both of those conversations on July 3rd and July 14th. And one of the things that we did spend a lot of time, I mean, that was a small portion of our conversations, was the remorse on Mr. Simpson's part that Mr. Fremont accepted. Most of the time we were talking about some other unfortunate things that happened with Mr. Fremont. I know because I've researched this now. There was some civil litigation that went on out there, and this was against primarily against one of the uncharged co-defendants in this case, individual named Riccio. Something happened in this civil litigation, and I don't know what's going on with it at this point in time, other than Mr. Fremont addressed those concerns with me. I told him that I would look into it. I explained to him that he really should talk to his lawyers who were involved in that civil litigation to try and make that judgment do whatever he wants it to do. And it was unfortunate. I believe that this kind of is an opportunity to show you that in the criminal case he's completely the victim, but he filed this civil lawsuit, and the jury actually found Fremont 16% liable for what happened here. It was pretty unique, to say the least. In any event, Mr. Fremont is going to testify, but I did feel that I needed to note that I don't think I have a point to prove with Mr. Fremont, other than he did represent that he was going to testify favorably for Mr. Simpson, and that he did discuss with me on multiple occasions this idea of some civil judgment out there that he was hoping that Mr. Simpson could take care of for him. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Simpson, did you have any closing remarks?
I hadn't heard any, except that, I've come here, I've spent 9 years making no excuses about anything. I am sorry that things turned out the way they did. I had no intent to commit a crime. I came here, I tell the inmates all the time, man, I don't want to hear about your crime. Argue in court. Here we're all convicts. I'm a convict. Do your time and don't do anything to extend your time. I told the warden when I got here, Mr. LaGrange, I think it was, Ms. Carpenter and Ms. Megan, that I would be no problem I believe in this jury system. I will honor what the jury said, and I will be no problem, you know, and I think I kept my word. As I said, I've done my time. I'd just like to get back to my family and friends, and believe it or not, I do have some real friends, but I don't think I could have represented this prison. I don't think any inmate has ever represented it better than I. I did my time. I tried to be helpful to everybody. And as I said, Bruce and Beardsley, I made up with them years ago, you know. So I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry to Nevada. I wish Ricio had never called me. I thought I was glad to get my stuff back, but it wasn't worth it. You know, 9 years away from your family is just not worth it. And I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just one more thing for the record. Your expiration is, as of today, 9/29/22, and for all those people in the world wonder how that adds up to 33 years in the state of Nevada. Good behavior, complying with the rules, can mean up to a 50% reduction off the back end of your sentence. If granted parole, that September 29, 2022 time could even move closer. So I wanted to put that on the record. And at this point, I'll ask Officer Batista if you will move Mr. Laverne and Mr. Simpson again, and we invite Mr. Furlong to the table, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Furlong, if you will put your own name on the record for us, please, and then proceed.
Yes, it is Bruce Furlong, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today. First and foremost, I'd like to state that I'm not here just as Mr. Simpson's friend of almost 27 years, because that I am. But today I'm also appearing as the victim of the crime on September 30th, or September 13th of 2007. On that day, I felt that Mr. Simpson was misguided, not by himself, but also by Tom Ricio. He was led to believe that on that day there were going to be thousands of pieces of his personal memorabilia, pictures of his wife, from his first marriage, pictures of his kids, Arnell and Jason, family heirlooms. He was told there were going to be possibly his wife's wedding ring, thousands of things. He was misled about what was going to be there that day. A man named Thomas Ricio had promised him this big package. In reality, Thomas Ricio had never met me. Never had met me in his entire life until the night of the robbery. He got there and saw all this stuff. He went down, he got OJ, and instead of telling him that that's not what was there, he brought him up anyway. And when OJ got there, unfortunately he was already worked up and had people with him that were hollering and screaming. There was a lot of commotion going on in a very, very small room. Real small room, wasn't it, OJ? And a lot of things happened very quickly. And unfortunately, if OJ had just said, everybody out of here, Bruce and I need to talk for a minute, none of this needed to happen. But that didn't happen. And it took, one of the things I want to make clear is that it took me 2 years in a California court, because in a judge's infinite wisdom, instead of going ahead and turning things over, everything got sent to a California court, to get straightened out. And after having to fight the Goldman's lawyers, OJ's lawyers, and it took me 2 years to get back with over 600 items. A majority of it did come back to me because I had to go back 19 years through our friendship, but I had to go back 19 years, produce records for almost 98% of the stuff. And it is true that items in that room belonged to OJ. There were no two ways about it. But it's also true that I have never stolen anything from OJ. I have never stolen from OJ. I think OJ will admit that I did not ever take anything from you. It wasn't me. An ex-partner of mine and his mistress, Christy Lukemeyer, have taken things. Other people have taken things from OJ, but I have never stolen from OJ. OJ is my friend, always has been, and I hope will remain my friend. But there were things in that room, and I admit to that. And I'm sorry things did not work out differently. But there were, and I will make this clear to you, OJ never held a gun on me. There was a coward in that room, a man named McClinton, came up gangster style, acting like a big man. He held the gun on me, not OJ. Came in, hit me, not OJ. He never laid a hand on me. A lot of people are yelling, bag that stuff up. Let's get out of here. During the trial, after I'd already testified against OJ, and this is why I absolutely believe him, after I'd already testified against OJ, I'd already said everything I had to say, we happened to pass each other in the hallway. And OJ came up to me and said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And we had a chance to talk to each other. And I told him I'm sorry that I did not get the opportunity to call him and tell him that I had that stuff. Those few items that belonged to him, I told him I'm sorry that I did not take the opportunity to call him because we'd been apart for a long time. We hadn't had a chance to talk for many, many years. And I'd been buying stuff from Mike Gilbert. And I wish I had of. And he said, "Bruce, I can't tell you how sorry I am." And we've got a saying between us, it is what it is. And he put his hand out, I shook his hand, and I said, "I forgive you." We all make mistakes. OJ made his. He's been here, and from what I've told, he's been a model inmate. He's been an example to others. During the trial, I recommended that he serve 1 to 3 years. That's what I recommended to the DA. And I'm here to say that I've known OJ for a long time. I don't feel that he's a threat to anyone out there. He's a good man. I know that he does a lot for other people. And I feel that 9.5 to 33 years was way too long. And I feel that it's time to give him a second chance. It's time for him to go home to his family, his friends. This is a man. He made a mistake. And if he called me tomorrow and said, "Bruce, I'm getting out. Will you pick me up?" Juice, I'll be here tomorrow. I mean that, bud.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments and we appreciate you being present today. Thank you.
Thank you. opportunity.
So Mr. Laverne and, you're welcome. Mr. Laverne and Mr. Simpson, if you'll return to the table, please.
Before we break for deliberation, I want to ask the panel members if they have any other last questions, anything that, okay. What's going to happen now is deliberation. Again, another thing we do with every single case, but a little differently today, because frankly, we need our offices back, folks. So we're hoping to deliberate, come to an agreement, and be able to produce an order sometime in the next 30 minutes or so. So what's going to happen is we are going to break and then after deliberating, we'll come back to this room. I'll ask each commissioner to vote. I'll vote myself. If we are able to agree when those votes are cast, that will be a final decision. If it becomes obvious that there is a split on this particular panel, I have Commissioners Eddie Gray and Commissioner Michael Keeler stand by in Las Vegas, and we will call them, they will either cast a vote then or ask for to return to deliberation. So that is what we're planning at this moment. We are about to leave the room. I know Officer Batista is going to arrange to clear the courtroom there also. I ask that here that you give us about 2 minutes to clear out of the room so that you're not chasing us down the hall. And then we'll give you a 5-minute notice that our deliberation is over and that we're ready to cast votes. So on that, I will call this hearing into recess, and we will return after deliberation.
Okay, Lovelock, this is your 5-minute warning. They're going to be coming back in with the, to vote.
Yeah, I got some.
And with the exception of our.
Ask Brooke, she knows what I'm asking.
Are they bringing them in again? Okay.
Oh, yes.
They're not live yet.
That's it.
Yeah, take a seat.
All ready?
Thank you.
We are.
Well, talk to you. I could talk to him after.
The warden has to approve everything.
Oh, I can't even talk to him after.
I already tried.
Waited this long.
Yeah. My best to you. Kids.
Put them on the visitor list.
She said they got a couple minutes to go on.
My best to my favorite lady. You know what I'm speaking of. She could be so happy. Tell her I wanted to call her, but I don't call anybody from here. You know, they're my family.
I think I relate that to her before.
No, this is an elderly former writer for AP. His predecessor. Linda Deutsch.
She said the best, by the way.
This,
Oh.
yeah. I'm talking to no one here. I'm talking to no one. I'm talking to space. This Jeffrey Felix is a complete fraud. He wrote a book about me.
I told you I'd handle it, you know. I've told all the news networks for over a year now, this guy is ridiculous, but, you know.
How much heat I'm taking from all the guys telling me I should sue this guy.
I will. But they believe what they want to believe, you know.
They do. Sensationalism.
You get ice cream.
As quickly as possible.
Cookies. I mean, it's infantile.
I didn't hear that there was a fight over the cookies.
Well, he saved you, you know, he saved you. He saved you from having any infractions because you were going to get written up for it, right?
Thank you.
You're going to get written up, and he intervened, and he saved you. So he's your savior. Who would believe anyone with a mullet like that? Dyed hair.
Yeah, he's the one and only. That's for sure.
I'm glad you said it, but I was thinking about it.
Well, it's disrespectful to the COs here, the real COs who do these jobs here all the time and have done a great job. and Mr. Simpson has always spoken phenomenally well about the conditions here and how he's been treated. And so I just think it's just a disgrace.
This guy is, this guy was never even a portion of the prison, ever.
No, he wouldn't be able to spot yourself.
You know, when I would see him, is when we would go in the store, we would go in the canteen. I guess he'd come out of that area and he'd stand at the fence and tell us these crazy stories. I mean, it's funny, I give him that. But about how he got kicked out of his son's baseball game and how he was refereeing and I mean, the guy's funny, you know. But outside of that, I don't know. His talk says I got a shrine in my room and he walks me of the yard. I mean, and he's shameless. Jesus.
Well, I like the fact that when it seems like he's running out of material and they have no more interest in him, he has new things that he can explain about you that you were doing. And that, I think the ice cream's new.
What, it's an ice cream store?
There is an ice cream story. I wasn't able to really read all of it, but there's some kind of ice cream story he's thrown in now. Kind of like President Trump, you know? Trump gets 2 scoops, everyone else gets 1. I think it's something like that.
I heard that.
Something ridiculous.
I swear, I wanted to say that, and I'm talking to space again, but this cutting in line.
Okay, I call this parole hearing on Orenthal James Simpson back into order. Are we ready to vote, folks?
Chairman Bisbee, I'll start off. Mr. Simpson, you organized this crime in which 2 victims were robbed at gunpoint. It was a serious crime, and there was no excuse for it. You deserve to be sent to prison. You've been in prison now almost 9 years, the minimum amount imposed by the court. You have complied with the rules of the prison. You have programmed in an acceptable manner. You have no prior conviction of criminal activity. You are low risk to reoffend on our guidelines. You have community support and stable release plans. We've heard from you and from your victim. The question here, as with all parole hearings, is whether or not you have served enough time in prison on this case. Considering all of these factors, my vote is to grant your parole effective when eligible.
We believe that we're a fair board. We believe that we're a consistent board. I will let you know that that consistency also goes to parole. And we do not look kindly upon parole violations. And if I cast my vote to grant and it concludes the hearing, our expectation would be that you not violate even the simplest condition of parole. Having said that, I am prepared to cast a vote. I am prepared to ask the commissioners to set conditions. If that happens, we will produce an order sometime in the next 15 to 20 minutes that will be faxed to you or presented to you at the institution, and it will become a public record. So based on all of that, Mr. Simpson, I do vote to grant parole when eligible, and that will conclude this hearing.
Thank you. You're holding up good too, man, all these years.
Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. You guys good?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ken Ritter. I'm a reporter with the Associated Press. I work out of Las Vegas. I've been your pool reporter inside. I learned to bring water with me outside because you made me nervous last time. I'll start again at the top. I'll share with you as we're walking out, I think news reached the yard, and I think I heard cheers. I can report to you that Mr. Simpson won parole, but you already know that. I'd like to tell you what the reaction was in the Lovelock Parole Hearing Board room from Mr. Simpson and his family when he received parole. But the image that I'm left with is Mr. Simpson walking out of the room to with a corrections officer guard alone, and as he walked down the hallway, raising his arms and saying, "Yes." "Oh God, oh," he said. Mr. Simpson, when he heard that he had won, bowed his head to the table, put his hands on the table, said, "Thank you, thank you." You saw the parole board as they were delivering their comments. Mr. Corda first. Ms. Jackson, I believe, was. You'll know who was third. After the third vote, Shirley Baker, Mr. Simpson's sister, began openly weeping and hugging his daughter, Arnell. And as I just described for you, Mr. Simpson's reaction when he learned. I was asked earlier if it seemed that Mr. Simpson was nervous. Any nervousness earlier was gone. I can take questions. This was relatively brief inside. You should now have the pool reports that did not go out earlier. I hope those are helpful. Yes.
Check, check, check. Check, check. Tell the control. Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic check.
How much longer?
1, 2. We have 25 minutes, 24 minutes. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check, check. Should I stop for now? The podium's fine, right?
You're good.
We'll do it again once we get the shotgun back. Or is that word? Oh, wait. Do you want?
I'm just kind of getting a general focus.
Oh, for.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are welcome, Jonathan. Are people going to stand up to ask questions? No.
In case they do.
Oh, in case they do. Sorry.
Prepared guy.
Huh?
Super prepared.
I love that.
While we're waiting after this, and you can go through and kind of, because I was rolling on almost all of it. I stopped every once in a while so I had different clips. But, and then guesstimate, this is what it says, this is about what our salary is. I'm on OT since I walked in the door today, so I don't care. Take all their money for a little bit.
Just to both sides, actually.
Do you mind asking Al to ask the control?
You made me put my shades up, and I can't even see. Hello, how are you? Doing very well. Any questions? Here's my intention. My intention is to come out and answer maybe a couple of questions for a few minutes. And I'm going to go back and spend time with Simpson and Mr. Simpson, and then I'll come back out again. So this is very brief. So anyway, if you're going to say something, you probably identify your full name, your news organization, and the parent company of the news organization before you ask, okay? Is that fine? Is that a fair deal? All right, how can I help you? I think it was it certainly didn't hurt, and I think it was actually very influential that he came in and he did what he said he was going to do to me when I talked to him on the phone over the course of a couple of weeks, which he was going to testify favorably for Simpson. So I think it was very, very good, and obviously if he had testified negatively, it kind of was going to be contradicted by what he had been telling me. That's kind of why I felt it was important to bring up that conversation with him to say what he's been telling me all along. But right now, Mr. Frommong is there with Mr. Simpson's family. They're all talking right now. He actually would. I asked, Mr. Simpson actually wanted to see Mr. Frommong. Mr. Frommong wanted to see and spend some time with Mr. Simpson. It's not being permitted at this time for various respected reasons for the Nevada Department of Corrections. And so, but they're friends. These are friends, and they were friends. This was a big mishap. So I think it was actually very, very positive. What, in there? I don't think he said anything to me. You know, I mean, the mics were right there. You would have caught it, but I don't think he said anything. He was just very happy. He obviously was very emotional. If you were looking at the cameras, he was very emotional. So, next question.
Stephen Week, NBC Network News. Is he worried about how he's going to be received by the public?
Not at all. No. He's been in the media spotlight since he was 19. If he didn't explain it on camera, he certainly explained it, in private. So he's always used to dealing with media attention. That's never been a problem for him at all. Listen, do you know that Jeffrey Felix is a complete fraud and everything that you said? I was actually watching you earlier this morning when you were giving your testimony. You must have been up pretty early. And I mean, can't you tell that guy is the biggest fraud on the planet. All these stories are said.
Move your mixer. Move your mixer.
He's self-published book. Right? And if you'll publish anything related to Mr. Simpson, people are dying to pay money for it. It's even the least incredible. No one even paid him any money.
Go back to the podium. Go back to.
And I've told ABC News a million times, which is also ESPN, which is also Disney. I've said a million times through your producer that this guy's a fraud and a phony, and every single thing he has in that book is made up, okay? But no, you didn't, and so I don't want you to take any questions from you because you have gone on and perpetrated a fraud for this Jeff Felix, who's supposedly the guarding the juice guy. You embarrass and make a mockery of the corrections officers over here, okay, who are actually doing a really good job. And Mr. Simpson actually has very positive things to say about the Nevada Department of Corrections. The wardens all here have treated him great. They're very compassionate. In his words, they actually treated him terrific, okay? This Jeff Felix is, I mean, you see that mullet and how his hair's dyed, right? You don't buy credibility from people who are like that, who even look like that, all right? And you should have at least tried to vet the story. For the last year, you could have vetted the story. So I'm a little bit agitated when I see you. Now, maybe I'm taking it personally because you were the one on the news repeating all this stuff that Jeff Felix said, every bit of which was false, every bit of which is unverifiable, every bit of which is untrue. But you were doing it this morning, okay? So Jeff Felix is a fraud. I don't want to take any questions about Jeff Felix. I don't know what I'll tell you exactly what Jeff Felix is. He was here, he worked in the canteen, and Mr. Simpson, like every other inmate, when they go to canteen once a week, would see this guy. And he was kind of like a minstrel. He'd sit there and tell jokes. He wanted to impress Mr. Simpson, and that's the end of it. He couldn't identify Mr. Simpson's cell, okay? Maybe he knows the unit because someone told him, but he certainly couldn't even identify the cell. And I've already got it in this has agitated me so much that I already have it in progress to strip this guy of his pension benefits. What goes on in this prison here between the Nevada Department of Corrections and its personnel, okay, is confidential. And he violated that by publishing that silly, ridiculous book that he did. So I'm starting the process right now of getting his pension stripped. And if it isn't clear with the Nevada Department of Corrections or the PERS, whoever has the benefits now, the rules definitely need to be changed or clarified that when a corrections officer like Mr. Felix discloses confidential information, of course it's false, but even when he does so based on someone's celebrity, you just get your pension benefits stripped. So let's say how he likes that when he sees the consequences of his actions right now. So I'm just going to just yank all his pension benefits. Next question.
Did you expect O.J. Simpson to take such a defiant stance, especially in his early testimony, essentially relitigating the whole case?
I don't understand the question. What do you mean? How was he defiant?
He continued to insist that it wasn't his responsibility,
I don't
that
think
he had
insisted
been
that it wasn't his
bamboozled into the
responsibility.
crime.
I disagree with your characterization of that.
How would you describe his
It was an explanation
testimony?
for what was going on, you know? I mean, I don't think he's taken plenty of responsibility. Anytime something like this happens, you obviously wish you could do better. The biggest thing here, what made this case more so than what it was, were the guns, okay? And so that took this case from being kind of a, somewhat of a laughingstock of a case to serious when guns are involved.
That it was his right, essentially, to go back there and get his stuff back. One would think that that would be over
I don't think he
already.
said it was his right. I think he said he wanted it, and his stuff was his. So I don't think he said it was right. He didn't feel entitled he felt entitled to the property. He now knows that obviously you can't go, even under Nevada law and most laws of the state of the United States, you can't go and take property, even though it's 100%, not in dispute that the property belongs to you, okay? You can't go back and take it by force. If for some reason you stole this from me right now, okay, and then I come and I see you and you have it, all right, I can't go and beat you up and hit you with anything to take it back for myself, okay? I can't do it. And so that's it. So I'm not sure when you said he can't take responsibility. He's taken responsibility. He was just offering an explanation. Next question. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to... Not if I have anything to do with it. The answer is no. The Parole and Probation, the Nevada Department of Parole and Probation, which is known as PNP, they just stated that on the record. That's a question you can refer to them, but the date that they stated is the date they stated.
Did anything inside there surprise you?
I'm trying to think. No, I mean, there was a lot of preparation. Normally these hearings, I think to actually do a perfect hearing, a parole revocation hearing like this, you probably could have prepared, a lawyer probably could have prepared for less than an hour for this hearing, all right? You see my file here, how much I have. I don't have books of reams of things. The whole file is in here, okay? And this one obviously was dealing with the onslaught of the media requests, dealing with various things, and dealing with the Nevada Department of Corrections through their liaisons, and dealing with the Department of Parole and Probation through their liaisons. And I mean, I may come out, but my intention right now is to go spend more time with Mr. Simpson and his family. I don't think there was anything that was surprising, because we were able to control a lot of things so well, so much, and especially the hearing. The biggest part of the hearing, obviously, for me, was making sure that certain information was just kept, obviously there's a 10,000-pound elephant in that room, and I think we were very successful in making sure that that elephant was sleeping, and that it was washed and very cleaned, and that it never started, rearing its head or knocking things around. So that was, for me, that's 100% success when that was excluded and kept out. Thank you. No, that was just a letter he had communicated to Assemblyman Fumo, and that was just in the letter. That was the content of the letter. I just read it. That was a letter from him to Assemblyman Fumo, and he's just saying a letter because he had just taken a computer course. And obviously one of the things you learn in computer courses is, if you're doing any modern day computer stuff, is web pages, blogging, all of that stuff. So he said that. So it's not something I would ever advise. What's your name? What's your name and your organization? No, I wasn't referring to that at all. I mean, come on. You know exactly what I was referring to. Come on.
Doubt he would get paroled?
Excuse me?
Did you ever doubt that he would get paroled?
Well, the answer is yes, and no. Yes, because Mr. Simpson is obviously a very polarizing figure. He's very, very well loved. But also he's, held into contempt by a lot of people. And he also wanted to thank the media for, not thank the media, excuse me, thank the people, his fans who have communicated through the media. You won't publish the positive things that are said about him, but he's, all of his fans have sent him mail saying that they've sent a lot of information to the media. And I've never seen any of it published, maybe one article or something like that. So he wants to thank them. He wants to thank the NDOC, thank the PNP, all of these organizations. So he's just so polarizing. Going back to your question, he's just so polarizing that it was hard to really know the certainty of this. I'll tell you one thing that made me very optimistic, and I'll be very frank with you here. The one thing that made me very optimistic is that and this is something I don't think was published, is that the parole commissioners here that you saw, the 4 individuals, and then there's 2 others that are still active. It's a commission that's 7 total. Those commissioners are actually appointed. They're not elected officials, okay? So they're actually appointed by the governor, and more importantly, and this is what's important, this is why I started feeling very, very good about this, they can only be removed for impeachment, almost like a federal judge. Now, their terms expire, but they can only be removed for impeachment. So they can make decisions regardless of the outcry and the heat on them, okay? That's unlike the process that Mr. Simpson has been exposed to for the last 9 years, where he's dealing with elected judges. And listen, who wants to be the judge who has to run for office that says, I did something favorable to let O.J. Simpson go? I mean, we put on, when I say we, attorneys Tom Pitaro and attorneys Ozzie Fumo and attorneys Trish Palm, all phenomenal lawyers. They actually helped me prepare for this hearing today. They put on probably one of the strongest habeas cases you'll ever find, okay, after the conviction. And it was an uphill battle, and it was respected that it was an uphill battle. But I just, if you sit in those judges' seats and you like your judge position and you know that it's elected, if you do anything negatively against, if you do anything favorably for Simpson, you got to be thinking, hey, someone's going to I'm going to draw an opponent, and the first thing the opponent's going to say is, this is the judge that let O.J. Simpson go, okay? So that's it. All right, I'm going to go back and spend some more time. Huh? I'm gonna go back and spend time with with Mr. Simpson and his family a little bit. I'll be back after it's finished. It's kind of hot out here, and hopefully it's hot enough for you to all be gone by then. But if you're not, I'll answer some more questions, all right? Take care.
They submit the order to Florida, and Florida has to approve it, and his caseworker then works on the actual release with the state of Florida. No, I don't.
And remember that I can send you on my list. Yeah, Times had, remember during the
The guy
trial,
who spoke
Times
here?
had a Vegas person.
Okay, I'll do that.
I don't know.
So you do the sound?
That's bizarre. It's just.
Yeah.
They must be just taking.
All right, sounds good, good job. No. Oh, they weren't? Yeah, no, we're good. Right. No, we're good.
Did you say you were doing fires before you got here then? Is that what you were doing?
I did fires all last week, and then Sunday night I had to fly to Arizona for the people who drowned at that base.
Oh, the flash flood?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going back for McCain?
No, I'm going, I'm just heading back to San Diego. I think a lot of people are heading down.
Yeah.
But it explains a lot lately.
So they were all, it's just too bad. I mean, I'm glad they caught him, It's horrible.
Yeah, that's gonna take up your life for a while.
Yep.
Like being around that bird, you see, the entire time, I know the history.
Oh man, I think you should have been in there when he was talking about Linda Deutsch. That was awesome.
What do you say about Deutsch?
Well, he just said, oh, I remember that elderly AP writer, Linda Deutsch.
The one who built her career on you.
Yeah. I was like, oh. Well, Linda can sit that feather in her cap that they were friends.
We turned the sound down there.
Yeah.
Michael.
We still are on sound.
You're gonna blow it yet. You're gonna.
So I was looking here, there's already a couple outlets that are, that my, their headline was caught on open mic, and they're already, okay. I didn't read the headline. I didn't read the story, I saw the headline. Thanks, Mike.
What they asked for.
Like 30,000
But I kept my phone charged in right there in the room.
2-bedroom, large 2-bedroom. And the basement, access to storage in the basement.
Right. Once they turn it out, just did, but.
It is weird.
These things have to build.
Once they get in trouble.
So the phone things, you can't do it. The phone thing, that's why they stand back. Build them and all that. Send drafts. That's, yeah, that's why I do it. I hardly use the copy. It's just too, yeah. I don't tend to. That's why I never get this out.
There's an email I sent you with all the pictures, but it's not loading.
When you go outside.
Oh, yeah. It's legal, but it's also more.
For some reason,
Huh?
checked
Cool.
the
Well, that's good.
video,
Why not?
the neighbors of this family.
When you said real estate, you have to apply. But it's, I still build it. He's still based in Vegas?
They had just done it.
Nevada, yeah, Nevada, yeah. Captain Sean, A-R-R-U-T-I.
Just got me a new vehicle.
Nevada Department of Parole and Probation. Warden, I-S-I-D-R-O.
That'd be bad.
Just holler at me and I'll.
Yeah.
You go here, and I was like, no, I'm not going. She's like, well, okay, I understand. Fine. Let's try to sell the house.
I actually had.
I didn't talk to them anymore.
You were not. Yeah, during the informal.
It was great.
Alex still has. I went to American Cameras and there you are.
The last 2 months, I said, I'm not going, I'm not traveling.
And then she's all.
You were traveling so much. And then we were trying to sell the
Yeah,
house.
Summer Meyer was, he and I were texting last night. And he was all, it's his Supreme Court.
And I actually put the house on the market before I knew about this job, so I took a chance.
You know what, especially since you picked up a job with them, if you look at how it all shook out.
Yeah, I'm another, so I'm another refugee. You are? Yes.
Oh, yeah, she was out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I forget that you were there.
Huh, yeah. No, I worked on Techno, the science show, out of, Culver City. So, No,
You guys need a 5 minute heads up? You guys need a 5 minute heads up?
We have no heads up yet.
No,
We're ready,
have
we're
we?
ready if you are.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no, legit show.
Okay, first, I've got some handouts for you, if you guys want to pass them.
What are these?
The speakers, so just go ahead and take one and pass it on, and then.
That's for savings. There you go.
Make sure it's like
Nope, run that way. Send them this way.
Thank you. Just make sure there's not anybody else.
David, I also have a handout for the Division of Parole and Probation. It's a double-sided copy, and it's also got my contact information on there.
David, is the Florida person gonna be speaking?
No, no, we knew that we'd get a question as who to contact.
Okay, so, thank you.
Are all the poll reporters here?
Yes.
Okay.
All three of us.
All right, let me just make sure one.
Did a nice job with the colors. Just so you know.
I can't take credit for that. That's a prepared one by the Interstate Compact Office.
You guys have this? I didn't get that one, thank you.
Are these available? These online?
They will be now.
That's a tough
Just so that you know, the colorized copy on the back of the one for parole and probation, that one is online, and it's on that website that's listed on there. www.interstatecompact.org, and then the other one we will make available online.
Jim, come over here.
These are the orders. Any conditions? The conditions of parole?
And if you want to just let them pass those down, Kathy. Take one and pass them down. Are we good? All right. Good afternoon. My name is David Smith, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners. With me today are Captain Arudi, who's Nevada's Interstate Compact Commissioner and an employee of the Nevada Division of Parole and Probation, and Warden Baca from the Northern Nevada Correctional Center. Captain Arudi and Warden Baca are available to answer questions relative to their operational jurisdiction. Before I read my statement and answer questions, I'd like to take the time to thank Chief Tushpan of the Nevada Capitol Police, Sheriff Kenny Furlong, and Assistant Sheriff Ken Sandage of the Carson City Sheriff's Office for their help with security and crowd control today. I'd also like to take the time to thank the Nevada System of Higher Education and the IT staff of the Nevada Department of Corrections for their network and video conference support for this hearing. Lastly, I want to thank and recognize the administrative staff of the Nevada Parole Board, who for the past 3 months have done a tremendous job working together to facilitate our activities related to the public and media interest in this case. At 11:55 a.m. this morning, the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners voted to grant parole to Mr. Orenthal Simpson, effective when eligible. Mr. Simpson's eligibility date is October 1st, 2017, and he may be released from prison on or after that date, once any proposed release plans have been approved. The board stated the reasons for granting parole included: Mr. Simpson had no prior or minimal criminal conviction history, he had a positive institutional record, he had participated in programs specific to addressing behavior that led to his incarceration, he has stable release plans and community and family support, and the victim in the case testified in support of Mr. Simpson's release. This case will now be turned over to the Division of Parole and Probation to gather and investigate Mr. Simpson's proposed release plans. Captain Arudi and Warden Baca indicated they don't have specific statements to make, so at this time I can open it up to questions.
You know, interestingly, that you've already provided us the contact information for Florida. So you were talking about earlier, Captain, about the process in Florida. So have you already talked and discussed all of this with him in anticipation of this, since he had already made his, his desire to move to Florida clear? I mean, did you already know about this, and are they aware and ready for this?
So, to answer your question, We did not know what the parole board's plans were, if they were going to approve it or not, because they make that determination at the hearing. What we did do is advanced planning in anticipation that if he were to be granted parole, that part of his plan that we were aware of was that he'd had family in Florida that would serve as that support system for him. And with the understanding that he may be interested in doing an interstate compact, I have reached out to my counterparts in Florida. They are aware, and they're waiting for, they'll be waiting for our packet for their investigation to make the determination on whether or not they're willing to accept his case for supervision.
And they're also in a position to deny his request to go to Florida.
That's correct. So with the interstate compact, first of all, there's a handout that I provide to everybody that breaks down what the interstate compact process is. And that's a handout that's provided by the Interstate Commission for Adult Offender Supervision. Their website is on there, and it's a public access website. Anybody can go on there, and it's got everything you could ever possibly want to know about the interstate compact. So you're welcome to go on to there. But with that being said, they do have, when we put the packet together with the plan and list what his support system is, what his plan for parole is, we submit that to Florida. They have up to 45 days to do that investigation, and they provide a response. Interstate compact is not a guaranteed thing. Interstate compact is a privilege, but it's a privilege based on meeting certain criteria. And Florida, when they do their investigation, they'll make the determination of whether or not they're going to be willing to accept his case.
Captain, in your experience, how often does the receiving state say no thank you?
Depending on what the support system is. In the case of either a returning resident or in the case of resident family, the acceptance rate, as long as there's a valid plan of supervision, is high. In the case of a discretionary case where a person doesn't have that support system, but they have other opportunities they're looking to pursue or they're looking for a change of scenery, in those discretionary cases, the rate of acceptance is lower.
With 2.5 months between now and the eligibility date, what would be the hitch that he would not get out on October 1st?
So the one thing that Nevada doesn't control, under the interstate compact, the receiving state, which in this case, if the plan is for him to go to Florida, the receiving state would have up to 45 days. If they were to exceed that 45 days, that could postpone. If there was a problem with their investigation that they couldn't complete it in that 45 days, that could postpone the release. But with the amount of lead time, we don't anticipate that there would be a problem with that.
You would not have to spend any time in Nevada at all?
That's correct.
What if Florida said no?
If Florida said no, then the next step this is where I would have to be aware of what the conditions of his release were. Our pre-release unit would look to find him a suitable plan or work with him to develop a suitable plan for here in Nevada.
Will the date and location of his date of his release be given to the public and the media, or can he just be let go without any of us knowing?
That would be a conversation for Warden Baca. Parole and Probation works with the caseworkers at NDOC to develop a release plan and the release date, but the actual physical release is part of NDOC.
And how are they typically extradited back to that state or to that state?
Well, it's not that he wouldn't be extradited to that state. So if he were accepted for supervision in another state, then either family members would assist with those plans, but generally speaking, most of them either go by bus or plane. The travel arrangements are made upon in anticipation of their release.
So the calls you made to Florida previous to this, would you typically do that for another inmate knowing, hey, I want to spend the rest of my time in Indiana, or is this because we fast-tracked everything with Mr. Simpson?
It's not that it's fast-tracked, but because we know that it's such a high-profile case with a lot of interest in the interest of the other state and preparing them for the phone calls and the emails that they may receive, it was a courtesy to let them know that.
Captain, in the event that the Florida thing doesn't happen, is he allowed to pick another state? I know he has a daughter in California, so is he allowed to pick a different place to go?
Sure. As long as there's a valid plan of supervision and he has a support system, There's no, he wouldn't be restricted to just one state.
What is his family support system in Florida? What do you know about that?
I'm not familiar with what his support system is, other than I know that, that he had family members testify today.
But when he is released, say that Florida accepts him and they do it in time for him to be released on the earliest possible release date, which is October 1st. So he would then just walk out. Is there a possibility he may go to another institution, like some kind of step-down facility or halfway out, sometime between now and the time he's let out of incarceration?
So if the plan of transfer is to go to Florida, there wouldn't be a release to the street to go to Florida in that way that you're talking about, like a transitional living or a halfway house. But again, as far as the release process, I'll turn that over to Warden Baca to talk with you about. On my handout, I do have my contact information. You're welcome to give me a call. Additionally, I also have my email address. You're welcome to email me. We will update our website at Parole and Probation to include the same information that you have. Typically, the division does not speak specifically to one particular offender over another. What we will do is I'm more than willing to discuss with you what the general process is for the interstate compact or pre-release.
Well, let me put one final one on this, on the transfer to Florida then. Based on your experience, Captain, and the matrix you provided to us, does it appear that Simpson will go to Florida?
As long as he has a valid plan of supervision along with the support system, there would be a good opportunity for him to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what happens now? What's he, for the next couple of months, what's he doing? Just waiting?
Okay, so right now he will stay at Lovelock, and they'll develop the release plan for him for his release parole plan, and then we would go from there as far as for his release, prepare for his release.
Why, is there any I mean, say he stays in Nevada, is there any halfway house situation or anything for somebody that committed a crime as he did, or?
Well, right now his with his classification and all that, he'd probably stay in Lovelock, and then release just prior to his release, he would move to one of the other institutions that does releases. If he's going to release in the north, that'd be Northern Nevada Correctional Center. If it's in the south, more than likely High Desert State Prison.
So
And
he'd spend, what, 1 or 2 weeks there, a month?
right, it would be a short period of time. And then he would transport out. It's just easier to transport from those areas than it is from Lovelock.
Should this be another prison that prepares, that does releases? You mean that's a specialty of theirs or something like that?
No, all the release planning and all that would be done at Lovelock, and then it would just be the matter of moving them basically closer to a place that's easier to transport from, closer to an airport or such like that.
Oh, okay. And one other question. I'm sorry, if I might. One of the things that Florida will be considering is whether they want to provide the same type of support and supervision that normally he would have otherwise received from Nevada's probation commission, right? So if Florida does accept him, that means it's off your hands. Nevada doesn't have any role. Then once you move to Florida, they have Nevada probation and PART doesn't have any role in supervising his release after that.
So under the interstate compact, when a state accepts a person for supervision, the state the sending state, which in this case would be Nevada, he is still the responsibility of Nevada, and he will be the responsibility of Nevada until he discharges from his parole. What Florida is able to do is Florida is able to add terms and conditions to him to supervise him in a similar manner to how they would supervise their own in like circumstances. So in this case, Florida, if that's where he winds up doing his interstate compact to, Florida would provide him with terms and conditions, and Florida provides courtesy supervision for Nevada. But the ultimate authority for that case is still Nevada.
If I missed this, how long is this parole for? How many years?
It's for whatever his discharge date would be.
Okay.
Warden Baca, will the location and date of his release be released out to the public?
He would be made aware of when his release date, just prior and all that. We have what we call like a lock-in date of when we know for sure that that's the date that he's going to be going to. But as far as making any kind of announcement, that's not something we normally do for any of the other inmates. So I don't believe we would be doing that.
Warden, you mentioned that at some point he may be transferred prior to his release, but until then, for the near future, does anything change in the terms of his confinement privileges, the day-to-day at Lovelock?
No, none of that should change. This should just be really the only thing that he's going to be working on right now is preparing his plan, his parole plan, and making sure that gets in and all that, and just pretty much continuing with what he's been doing.
Is there a deadline for getting in that plan? To be able to make October 1st?
Well, he wants to get that information in as soon as possible so that people can start working on it.
So he doesn't submit that plan to you prior to today? You guys don't, you know he has people, I want to go to Florida, these are my support, but an actual plan, you don't have that yet?
Well, what we have is what happens prior is that there's a parole report that is done, and then his intentions of what he wants to do, should he make parole, is part of that parole report.
To the extent that he has to check in or with a parole or probation supervisor from time to time after his release, would he be doing that in Florida, or would he have to come back to Nevada for that? That's kind of what's the...
Yeah, so when he's under supervision by Florida as a courtesy supervision
Can you
for
go to the mic?
Nevada.
Can you go
Oh,
to-
sure.
please?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yes, so when Florida is providing the courtesy supervision of Mr. Simpson's case, he would report to a Florida probation officer or parole officer in this case.
If anything went wrong, you know, he did something, did something where that potentially was a violation of probation, ultimately he would end up answering for that back in Nevada.
Correct. So if his actions were to lead to a violation and Florida would submit that violation to us, ultimately, if he were to be returned for revocation, he would be coming back to Nevada to answer for that revocation before the parole board.
I know he's gone 9 years, no disciplinary action in prison, but in the next 2 months, is there anything that could happen at Lovelock or another facility that could jeopardize his parole being granted now?
Well, any inmate that's granted parole has to continue to follow all the rules and all that they need to, and you know, any inmate that has such a serious rule violation, there is the possibility of parole being revoked.
Well, is there a situation though, Warden, where can he ask for special protection or special, circumstances because he doesn't want to be sort of, I guess, put himself in harm's way or put himself in a situation where others might want to wish him harm or get him in trouble? So can he request any kind of special treatment or protection?
He could make that request. However, he would need to provide some sort of basically some sort of evidence to base that request off of.
You know what I'm saying. I mean, it's possible that, and he talked about it in his hearing, that prisoners have a tendency to do things for stupid reasons.
Right.
So if someone kind of had it out for him and wanted to jeopardize his parole.
They've had 9 years to do that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
As warden, do you have any reservations about letting him walk out of there on October 1st?
That the parole board makes that decision, and our job is to keep him until they tell us to let him go. So that's where ours.
And you weren't in the deliberations, were you, David?
Thank you. I came in and out when they were deliberating just to make sure everything was okay. I needed to do the timeliness, but I did not participate in their deliberations.
Were there any sticking points, any points that came up that they were disagreeing on?
By law in Nevada, deliberations for parole hearings are confidential, and so we would not
You
release.
can tell us, we won't tell
We wouldn't release any of that information.
Is there any paperwork that would be released after this date, the score, the ranking of why they let him go?
We just distributed
Did I see it? I did see it.
a copy of the order, the conditions of parole, as well as the risk instrument and aggravating and mitigating factors that they mentioned in the hearing.
Was there anything unusual about the amount of time that they spent deliberating?
No, I would, for this type of a hearing, generally deliberations with smaller panels are shorter because you have fewer people. For commissioners, that was not, it wouldn't be uncommon for those.
What about the time of the hearing, how long it took to get to deliberation?
This hearing was a little bit longer because of the amount of conversation that took place. There were 4 commissioners, so we knew it would last longer. We also expected that we would have a little bit more leeway. We would allow a little bit more leeway to allow information to get on the record. And they did want to take time to actually talk about how things are done because of the interest in this case.
Can you describe Mr. Simpson as a prisoner? What was he really like? His daily routine? Was he a model prisoner? It was said that he was a model prisoner, but what does that mean? Was he?
I'm sorry, ma'am. He was never at NNCC, and I had very little dealings, if at all, with him when he first came in at High Desert. So that would have been my only involvement with him.
Do you know?
No.
All right.
One thing, the parole board will not be doing any interviews, so this is your one shot to ask any question
Would you
of
do
the
an
board.
interview?
Sorry, no.
Will somebody at some point, David, at Lovelock be available to sort of characterize Simpson's incarceration?
Do you mean as far as like a PIO or something?
Yeah. Will someone
Brooke
there-
Keast is the PIO for the Department of Corrections, and she should be able to answer any questions related to that.
This is a little bit off topic, but and I forget when this happened exactly, sometime during the course of Mr. Simpson's incarceration, there were reports that he got into a fight and beaten up, something like that. I don't know if that was ever addressed then, or if you could address that now, whether he had were there any kind of conflicts that he did have, maybe that were not maybe his fault, but that he was involved in nevertheless?
Well, during the hearing, I noted that I didn't hear of any disciplinary rule infractions he had, so it said he was disciplinary free, so I would say no.
Can you again just reiterate why it is that we were able to get a decision today instead of waiting 10 days, 3 weeks, as we would for Joe Blow?
As you recall, in the 2013 hearing, it was a panel of one commissioner and one case hearing representative. After that hearing, there wasn't a lot of interest at the time of the hearing. We had several reporters and one photographer, I think, and one camera. But the minute that hearing took place, we became inundated with requests for information by the media. And so we got that order out as soon as we could. In February, there was there were news articles that started coming out, and we began to get inundated by the press for questions about the parole hearing, when it would be, and we realized if we didn't start then to prepare for a potential huge event like this turned out to be, that we would have a lot of problems. The board does hold hearings with 4 commissioners. It's not often, because we hold about 9,000 hearings a year, so we have to spread the caseload out between commissioners and hearing reps. In this case, because of the media interest, we opted to have a majority present so that we could provide a ruling on the same day and allow you wonderful folks to be able to go home and let us get back to work.
Mr. Smith, in Nevada, is expression of remorse and insight not a required criteria for release on parole?
It is not. Now, the board does note in some of its factors when a mitigating factor of remorse could be noted, but it's generally only applied, for example, if a person committed a crime and they immediately went and confessed or turned themselves in because of their immediate remorse. And that's the only time that factor is. But the board does not require that an inmate state or indicate that they are remorseful
There
to
was
get
some
parole.
talk that he wasn't really remorseful when he was answering some of the questions. You have been to other parole hearings. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
Is it true that he wasn't really that remorseful?
I think that you would have to let the hearing and the questions and the testimony of the hearing stand on its record, because I don't think I can address that here. Yes, sir.
You typically say that it takes days or sometimes weeks or even longer to make it to the board to render a determination. Or is it usually just days?
Okay, generally what happens in a regular parole hearing, the panel will make a recommendation to the board. And in Nevada, the panel can make a recommendation and the board members can review and vote by file review, and they can review. We record the hearings as well, so they can review the hearing if they had any concerns or questions, and then issue the order once there's a majority. So it doesn't have to be a public meeting to issue that. That can take, because commissioners in Las Vegas are voting on Carson City cases and vice versa, it can take about 2 weeks. And we don't generally release results until we know that the inmate has been notified, and so that adds a little bit more time to it. But in this case, because they had 4 commissioners who voted in a majority, they were able to give that answer today.
Maybe I missed it. Did you answer the question whether you're going to tell us when and where he will be released?
So typically, we don't give that give that information ahead of time. The inmate in general will know ahead of time when his release is. Basically, we give what's called like a locked-in release date. But as far as announcing when and where he's going to be released, we normally don't do that.
Normally, but this is not a normal case.
Okay. So I would tell you I don't believe we have any plans of doing that.
But he'd be here up until the final 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks, would that be safe to say?
That would be safe to say. He would remain in Lovelock until just prior to his release.
Would you make an exception?
Again, I don't believe we have any plans on doing that.
And the facility he would be transferred to would be one that was closer to airports and public transportation?
Yeah.
Or to populated areas? Like,
Yes.
Which, like, what would those be?
So we do releases, we primarily do releases out of NNCC for the Northern Nevada Correctional Center, which is located here in Carson City, and then out of, in the south, out of High Desert State Prison.
And how will he get back to Florida if that's where he goes?
Those arrangements will be made with his parole plan.
Yeah, those are, let me still say that.
Yeah, so once the release plan is developed, part of the arrangements that pre-release works out with the caseworkers at NDOC is the whether it's going to be by air, by train, and usually then they work with the family to make arrangements on the purchase of that ticket.
Thank you all very much for your
Thank you.
cooperation.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys. We realize you're going through
Thank you
a
very
great deal of
much.
trouble you don't normally go through.
Art,
Do you
you
know
have a
why-
question? You came a long way.
Do you know why one of the
Okay.
parole commissioners was wearing a Kansas City Chiefs tie?
I would say probably because he likes the Kansas City Chiefs.
If you had to do all over again, would you do it?
Pardon? Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. This will conclude the press conference, and I hope you have a wonderful trip back to wherever you came from. Thank you.
It's almost gonna be a long season for the Chiefs, so he's in trouble.
Thank you.